Welcome back to the
Welcome back.
podcast. Yeah. Dr. Jim. Yeah, you like that new intro voice, man?
Skibbity wow wow. It's like kind of
We're,
going beatnik here, you know.
we're doing philosophy. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. It's gonna.
I've
It's
been,
gonna.
I've
It's
been
gonna be
annoying my
appropriate. It's appropriate for the text, right? You
I've
know.
been annoying my fitness audience with that voice lately, and of course,
I
like
mean,
the moment one person got annoyed by it, now I'm on the double,
now,
you know.
yeah, yeah, exactly. Yeah. If you want, Pat's the kind of guy. If you want him to cut it out, don't tell him it annoys him. Right?
Yeah,
Yeah,
right.
that's not
Pavlin never backs down; he only doubles down. So
doubles
just
down exactly for good or ill, right? Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah,
Dr. Jim, man, we have a lot to cover today, my
we do.
friend. So
We
we
do.
are here to wrap up our series on Herbert Marcuse's One-Dimensional Man. And it's become a little bit of a theme now that when we finish a series, we like to try and tie it into current debates, contemporary culture, and
Yep.
we've got this great reset thing going on here. I guess people talking about it. I have to be honest, I really don't know much about it, but what the speculations are, what the hypotheses are, so I'm excited to explore that.
Right.
Um,
Right.
but you lead us on this
Sure.
great journey, my friend, because we have covered a lot of ground already. So please
We
take the
have.
reins.
This has been a good run, and I think a great precedent for the channel, right, on
Mhm.
how we're going to do things. And once again, this is my 48-year-old self confronting my 22-year-old self in many ways, in rereading this book now, right. Also, I want to give a shout out to Alex Del Curto, a fan of the show, who has really embraced the our series on one dimensional man. So it's helped them out in some of his studies. So very
Cheers.
happy. It hasn't all been for naught, right?
Yeah, no.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean,
And
look, I personally have been very enriched by
yeah,
this study. So
I have too.
this was Dr. Jim's idea, so he gets full credit for this
Yeah.
series. Mhm.
It's one of those books that I'm constantly shoving in students' hands. Like, if you want to understand the situation, this is the book you have to read, you know.
Yeah. Mhm.
And so, and we've said all along throughout the book, and I think especially in your case, you were surprised by how much you agreed with a lot of what Marcuse was doing, right?
Yes.
It's like then those hints of like something else to come that's going to creep you out, right?
Yeah, little hints
And
of a barn orgy here and there.
yeah, here and there, yeah. And today, we go from like the maybe agree with 98% to like probably disagree with 98% moment in the
Yeah.
book. This is the final, yeah.
This is the breakup.
This is
It's
the
happening.
breakup. Exactly. Yeah. We were on our way to being, Marcuse, like sort of a, critical theorists, and now
It almost became
last two chapters.
Marxism for the people. We were
Exactly.
this
Exactly.
close.
Yeah. Yeah.
But then these last two chapters
Last two
just
chapters. Yeah.
sorry. I'm sorry, Herbert,
Yeah.
but we
And
have
so,
to go.
yeah, sorry, it's over, buddy. Right.
The picnic's over.
Picnic's over. Yeah. Yeah. We're not going to this picnic, dude. Right. Not our idea of fun. Okay. So, always the table of contents, ever the table of contents. And, we're in the last section of the book, the chance of the alternatives. Okay. And this is his attempt to give his own positive, not in the sense of positive he used in the text, but in the common sense, his positive vision of what it would be to overcome the one-dimensional society, right? So we got one-dimensional society in the first section, we got one-dimensional thought in the second section, and now what would it be to overcome it? What would it be to return real alternatives for life, right? Within, or as a way of undermining this totalitarian system. Okay, this is one of the reasons why I think the book is so relevant. Is those first two sections are a really, really brilliant diagnosis of what totalitarianism round 2 will look like. Right,
Yeah.
like round 1 was literally camps. Right. Okay. Literally, Gestapo knocking on your door, et cetera,
Right. Outright explicit coercion.
outright. Yeah. Point of the gun, point of the bayonet. Okay. And the vision of totalitarianism we're given in One-Dimensional Man in those first two sections is no, it's a totalitarianism from the inside out.
It's a
The use
subterranean totalitarian.
subterranean totalitarianism, right? And it is a totalitarianism that has gained the technological means to control thought and desire from the inside out, right? And he has in mind here, just what was available in the 1960s when he's writing this: TV, radio, billboards, the coming of popular culture is like really kicking off now, and all this. And he's seeing this is an incredible means of totalitarian control, because it's going to give you the illusion of choice where there really isn't choice, right? Like the game is being rigged because we're getting what we want, but what we want is largely determined by subconscious, technologically driven manipulation, right?
Right.
Brilliant, right? And so now, if this is the way totalitarianism redo goes, we don't need camps, right? We don't need bayonets. We don't need, literal, jackbooted, black gloved Gestapo guys knocking on your door. We'll just get you, through a constant bombardment of your psyche, right, with messaging. Okay, and this is the vision really that you see in Orwell and Ray Bradbury,
And
right?
Huxley.
Yeah.
Right.
C.S. Lewis has his finger in this, right? Okay. And in Marcuse is giving like very, very interesting philosophical expression to that. And in those first two sections, I'm like, yes, exactly, right? And especially in the second section, one dimensional thought, where he starts to bring out a lot of these Heideggerian ish, right? Because I want to, there's more on that later, right? These Heideggerian ish critiques of technological rationality and how we have come to see the world in terms of what we can do with it, not in terms of what it is. There's been a rejection of metaphysics for the sake of technology, although technology kind of masquerades as metaphysics, it masquerades as theory, right? But it's all just practice. We have reduced the world to the primary qualities, so-called, that are amenable to our technological manipulation, right? So now the very notion of thinking is wrapped up with technological manipulation, and once again, this all plays that role in like concreting that totalitarian thought system, right, in techno rationality. I agree 100%. Okay, and now the question is, what do we do with it? Right, like, okay, now that we've been, as we'll say, woke to the totalitarian threat, right, how do we go forward? And that's what's good. That's what's going on in these last three chapters. Okay, well, the last two chapters in the conclusion. Chapter 8 for me was kind of it was, okay, kind of typical. There's a Hegelian possibility, blah blah blah. Okay, now in chapter 9, we're kicking off something now. Right. Okay. Right. So, anything to add to all that?
No, I think it's an excellent summary. And as you know, there were a few sections and paragraphs that I highlighted largely because they triggered me. But I want you to, I want you to take the lead. If we get to them, we'll get to them. Yeah.
Yeah. So what I want to do here is let me just kind of go big picture. I did some back of the book notes on this one. Even it was I was sitting in the dentist office for an appointment for my daughter this morning, listening to like terrible pop music being pumped into my ears and like the Food Network blaring TV. I'm thinking, wow, Marcuse is right about so much, but it's sort of an ironic thing to be reading Marcuse in that situation, right?
I had a little Steppenwolf this morning, so
there you go.
Yeah, I wonder how Marcuse would they probably read Marcuse at some point.
Yeah, probably. Well, the book was on the shelf at least.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Anyways.
Yeah. Anyway. Okay. So I want to give kind of a big picture of what he's doing in the chapter, right? Maybe before we get into like specific text.
Yeah.
Okay. So he starts out and he recapitulates his kind of standard historical story. And I think his standard historical story is largely correct, right? Like he's got this view, of the Greeks, right? And he says, look, the Greeks, and usually by the Greeks he means Plato, and he mentions Plato explicitly in this chapter, have this view of a separation of metaphysics and physics, of the metaphysical and the physical, right? And they still, though, see the physical as teleologically oriented to the metaphysical, right? Think of Plato like all the physical world is a motion toward the forms, right? Think of Aristotle, all the physical world is a motion towards the God, okay? And we understand the physical in terms of its teleological relationship to the metaphysical, right?
Yeah.
And it's our job to, assure, like, in as much as there's a human practical political project, right? Our job, especially in Aristotle, I think Plato punts on it, maybe rightly so. Especially in Aristotle, our job is to create a polis, a city that in fact mimics that teleological structure, right? That fits the motion of the whole world to the good, the God, right? The highest thing. Okay. And so the idea is that there's always an art perfecting nature operative in the Greeks, right? That nature is great, it's on its way, but we can sort of in the city perfect nature in a way to make it match the ultimate metaphysical reality, right? Even though it's already disposed a bit towards that, in the city, we can create something that will match this, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, but now note, this metaphysical, this teleological, right, is not our doing for the Greeks. It's found, it's not made.
Yes.
It's ahistorical, right? Mm-hmm. That's the point. It's beyond all history. It's beyond all change. It's okay. We get no vote in it, right? That's important. Okay. All right. Now, and then he brings up again. Marcuse brings up again his critique of modernity, right? And this time he spells it out in sort of this terms of what you have in modernity with the rise of positivistic science, of philosophical naturalism, operationalism, all the materialist isms that Marcuse has rightly rejected in this book, right? What you have is this eclipse of the metaphysical. It's a claim that there is no metaphysical, or the metaphysical is just irrelevant, right? And what we have is a teleology-free physical world that's just there for us to wail on, right? That we can do with as we will. All right. And then therein, therein lies our technological nihilism, right? That he rightly critiques. And this world is just there for us to manipulate and control, including us as parts of it, right?
Right. Mm-hmm.
Okay. Now, what he's proposing in this chapter is to say, no, there is a difference between metaphysics and physics, right? Right. But what we've learned is the metaphysical reality is historical. Mm-hmm. Okay. So what that means for Marcuse, it's up to us partly to decide what that metaphysical reality is.
Right. Mm-hmm.
Whereas for the Greeks, there's a metaphysical reality, and it decides for us what our politics ought to be, and we will do the best we can within those boundaries to shape the physical world to meet that. Okay.
Discovered, not invented.
Discovered, not invented. Yeah. Now, what Marcuse is saying is what we've learned now is the metaphysical reality is invented, not discovered. That's a crass way to put it, but that's a way to put it, right?
Yeah. Uh-huh.
And so now it's not a matter of our discerning the metaphysical truth and then trying our best within the bounds, the moral bounds that the metaphysical truth imposes on us to bring about a city in the physical world that matches it. We are now in a way determinative of that metaphysical truth, right? And so it's not like our politics now partly determine what that metaphysical truth is, along with now the world we will make in light of it.
Yes.
You see that, right?
Mm-hmm.
This is not how he puts it. It's not how he would like to put it. Whereas the Greeks held the metaphysical and the physical apart and saw politics as a way of linking them up on the metaphysical terms, right? The modernity sees the metaphysical as just collapsed into the physical, and we can just wail on anything we want now. Okay, just straight will to power. What Marcuse is doing now is he's collapsing the physical and the metaphysical into the political.
Yes.
Right. Uh-huh. Metaphysics, science, both just serve political ends, period, full stop.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Right. Okay. And so what this amounts to, and you see him do this again and again in this chapter, is to say, look, whereas the people that he cites as the great critics of technological rationality, Heidegger, the later Husserl, the people that we've added, C.S. Lewis, Tolkien, I think is a great example too. Like all these fiction writers.
I would put Chesterton in there too.
Yeah, by all means, Chesterton, I think great example. And no, an artist, right? Okay, he wrote fiction too, right?
Yep.
They all recommend that we try to find a space for ourselves outside technological rationality, right? They're not saying you can't beat them, join them. They're not saying we need to take the machine back, right? Okay. They're all saying we need to find some space for humane existence in the modern world that maybe makes its peace with, but is somehow independent from a rationality of pure manipulation, right?
Yeah.
Okay. What Marcuse is saying in this chapter is no, we need to take the reins of the machine. Yes, right. We need to take the reins of the machine, and we need to make a physical, metaphysical reality that meets our political ends. Right.
Yes.
He is not rejecting technological rationality. Right.
He wants control of it.
He wants control of it for and what he's going to say, this liberation process. Okay. This liberation process. All right. That's what's going on in this chapter. Right. And now this is now moving more from summary to critique here, and that to me is just Nietzschean will to power, techno-nihilism on steroids right there. Yes.
It's patent nonsense. I mean, this is where I think he's really gone off the rails. So first off,
I mean, like off the rails, off the cliff, right?
Yeah.
It's a plane crash on a bridge over a school for the blind, right?
Yeah, it's like, man, you really I was really gaining a lot of sympathy for you. Or can I call him Herb?
Yeah,
we're on a I mean, look at the picture, guys. You can call him Herb.
Exactly. I mean, come on.
Right. Just when I thought
next time together, we are posing for a picnic picture.
Yeah.
No doubt. Yeah.
Just when I thought we were becoming friends, right?
Exactly. Yeah.
I mean, so first off, he's just deeply inconsistent because he's undermining any possible basis now in which he could house or ground the other commitments that he wants, right?
Right.
Including rationality itself, right? Which is inherently teleological, right? Including all teleology, right? He's just like said, not only is there no grounds for it, there can be no grounds for justifying that, right? And that was a critique we actually made a little bit, I think in the last episode, but it definitely shows up again here. It's like, man, you've just sawed off the branch you're sitting on, all that sort of stuff, right?
Right.
He also finally at this juncture, because the question I've kind of had in the back of my mind is like, what is his kind of fundamental metaphysical commitment? He's still not entirely clear about that, but he does seem to give an endorsement for materialism.
Yeah, of a
at
sort.
One point.
Yeah.
And he does it after the section that I found was like hilariously sloppy, where he makes it sound like the Pope hates dogs, right?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
And it's like, come on, like now you're just playing games of rhetoric, my friend. Like you're not trying to do serious scholarship or philosophy here, because he quotes Bertrand Russell, right?
I know.
About like how the Pope like rejected a proposal from some society against the prevention of cruelty for animals, right? And then like tries to spin this into a critique of traditional natural law when he just engages in complete cartoons of it. So I have to say, like, my estimation of his like intellectual honesty and scholarship at that point just like plummeted really fast. Yeah,
it becomes kind of theater of the absurd at the end, right? Like it goes from and so so a couple more things on like what goes on in the chapter is, so he wants to, so remember that I think he's playing on this the Aristotelian notion of art perfecting nature. And by art, we mean craft, right? Human craft, right? Not just creative arts, but, any skillful engagement with the natural world, right? And the Greeks, have a sense that, like humanity in our crafts, in our disciplines, we do perfect nature in a way, but we don't change the fundamental teleological structure of nature, right? Okay. And go ahead.
No, I was just going to say, right? I mean, there's a wonderful book. It's not like deeply philosophical, but it's beautifully written by Thomas Howard called The Chance or the Dance. I don't know if you've read it or you know of Howard, right? But yeah, I mean, the idea is like perfection comes by learning the steps to a proper arrangement or a proper dance, right?
Yes.
Trying to change the dance at all isn't going to happen on this worldview. You can either dance in accord with it or not. One way is going to give you perfection and true freedom. The other way is going to give you ultimately frustration. Mm-hmm.
Right. And the Greeks had a high view of humanity's role in this, that they thought, like the polis is nature, like coming into its best life in the political life of a well-ordered community. But because the community fits the metaphysical order to which all nature strives, right? And if there's moments in this chapter where Marcuse says, look, in nature, it's dog eat dog, big fish eats little fish. It's full of all this fertile procreative sex going on in nature. There's all these things in nature that he's saying we're going to perfect nature by getting rid of those things. He goes off on contraception several times in these chapters.
He does.
Right? And by saying
he goes off on critiques of contraception.
On critiques of contraception. Yeah. Exactly. Yeah. By saying, you cannot say, like he wants to say that we can look at nature from a kind of metaphysical moral stance now, and to say nature is not good enough as it is. It's too violent. It's too full of children, right? It's too full of competition and all this, and it will be up to us to decide what nature ought to be and bring nature now to its best life through our design, right? Mm-hmm. Yeah. Okay. And so, so think of it like that is just unbridled will to power. It's unbridled will to power.
This is the handbook for the Great Reset. He wants the Great Reset. He wants to take control
Yeah.
of the machine and use it
Yeah.
to just completely reset nature, right? To
Yeah.
restart nature, right?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And he's saying again and again throughout this chapter, he's like, well, I am going to take, or I want us to take control of this technological media, right, psychologically manipulative machine, the very thing we talked about as totalitarian means of shaping us from the inside out through the control of thought, right? And I want to use it to these higher teleological ends. He's saying this moral vision that we have for a perfection of nature, even better than nature would have ever fathomed for itself.
Which
right?
is nonsense on its own
Which is
terms when you
it's
understand
nonsense
it,
on
right?
its own terms, and he's going to claim it's not totalitarianism because it's a kind of liberation, right? It's a liberation of nature from itself in a way, right?
Mm-hmm.
But one, we want to like, where do you get this higher order moral perspective that can say that it's somehow wrong for big fish to eat little fish? One wonders that, right? Or
Right.
you know what I mean? And but then still he's going to dominate and control thought now, right? This is where you get his other stuff where he talks about repressive tolerance, where we have to get rid of free speech, right? Because we cannot tolerate speech that is totalitarian. Okay, fine, but because you have a really just because you have a different totalitarian vision.
And I'm going to be a totalitarian to make sure totalitarianism doesn't happen.
Yeah. and so like why do we bring up the Great Reset? Well, because the Great Reset is supposedly this move to like sort of take us towards this transhumanist vision where we mediate everything through basically social media and this global media empire are everything, right? That's controlled by a few elites that have a vision of what's best for the world, right? Who have a vision for what's best for nature, have a vision to, like a vision for what's best for humanity as nature, right? And this is exactly the playbook for it, right? Or the philosophical quote unquote justification for it.
Yeah, what creeps, man.
Creepy. It's creepy. Yeah.
It's real creepy. But this is why we're studying this, because if you want to understand what is going on in the world
this is
right now, in the universities, in Seattle, Washington,
Silicon Valley,
Silicon Valley, right?
Yeah.
This is the book that you need to understand, right? What laid the groundwork for this. It obviously isn't the only book. It's within a much richer and deeper tradition, but it's a significant book, and it's extremely explicit, right? Extremely explicit in all this.
Yep.
So I mean, obviously,
this is the quiet part being said aloud, right?
Yeah, it really is. Now, obviously, like how you make even conceptual sense of this is something that escapes me completely. I don't think you can. I think he's twisted himself into an intellectual pretzel. I think it is nonsense on its own terms, right? The critiques he's making only make sense if he accepts the things he's trying to deny, right? It's just like, what is even going on here, buddy? And then we could say more about his like silly critiques of the term nature. I mean, this is bad. This is like kindergarten stuff in terms of like critiquing natural law with the big fish and little fish stuff.
And he does it under this kind of subterfuge of saying, well, he gives you all the examples of like some pretty delicious oxymorons that he pulls out of the headlines of the day about, peace through security, where what we mean are like nuclear weapons, right? and stuff like that. And he's right that there is this constant oxymoronic manipulation of speech. We could go in like our own contemporary examples of it for very different ends, right? And then he just kind of comes back with his own oxymorons now, right? As if to say, look, like this just shows that there's no sense to really be made of things, and what the metaphysical reality is up to us because it's all just manipulation, right? I mean, it's like he's not strange. He's not sticking to his critique of manipulative techno rationality. He's just jumping into it and playing the same rhetorical, psychological manipulative games as his opponents are now.
Yeah, it's not about getting rid of the machine. It's about gaining control of
the machine. It's gaining control of the machine. Yeah.
And and
then once we have control of the machine, we'll liberate humanity from nature and liberate nature from itself. And it's going to be Woodstock every day, man. It's going to be Woodstock every day. We'll be free of work. I love how he calls it the pacification of existence.
Yeah,
right.
Man.
I mean, nothing could smack more of like Nietzsche's Last Man than like the pacification of it. Like, you're just going to not have to worry about anything. You're just going to have like complete passivity, and you can just enjoy your barn orgy.
Yeah, and this is why I actually appreciate somebody like Nietzsche more than our friend Herbert here, because in a sense, I think Nietzsche is more honest and is willing to be more consistent. Right, like our friend Herb, right? He kind of wants his materialism and teleology too, but it's like, dude, you're not going to get that. Like, that's exactly what you can't get. And
A
to my mind,
teleology that's up to us is not a teleology.
it's not, yeah, exactly, right? And he doesn't seem to either have thought these things through, or he did think them through and just decided he's going to ignore those consequences, right? And just kind of like gloss over it. I can't decide which one it is when reading him. And this is where it's like, man, I don't think the options here, I don't think there's a range of options here. I think it's either you got to take really something like that classical Greek view, or you got to take something like absurdism, right? You know, which to me, absurdism and nihilism are closely bundled. But there's somebody who has a course coming
That's
out on
right.
that very soon, which we're gonna
Very
talk
soon.
about, right?
We'll talk about that, yeah.
So yeah, I mean, we could rail all day on this. I
Yeah.
think
Well,
our critiques. That's pretty much what I would want to say.
yeah.
But yeah, go ahead.
I mean, you know, so I think you know, what are the alternatives, right? So I mean, I agree with him that we're, you know, that we're just that we live and move and have our being in a milieu of just, you know, constant inside out manipulation, right? And we should not, I mean, it should be obvious that the motives of that are not entirely benign, right? At the
Right.
very least, it's trying to get us to identify ourselves with a meaningless product, right? It may be worse in many cases. Okay, I agree 100% with that. Those first two sections of the book. Okay, but now what do we do with that? Well, you could say what we're going to do is we're going to go rage against the machine here, but not really like rage with the machine, right? We're going to take
Which is what that band has done. Yeah.
which that band has done. Like, we're going to take the reins of technology and we are going to like now indoctrinate everybody into a nature in our own likeness and image, right?
Yeah.
Okay, there's that, right? And like, this just goes back to, you know, to like you know, Bacon with the founding of, you know, like the scientific revolution in Britain and Descartes, that really what this is all about is our mastering and commanding nature to bring about an Eden on earth, right? And Marcuse is, you know, as much as he'd want to say he's rejected the scientific operationalist founding of modernity, no, this is it. He just thinks the wrong people are running it. That's all he thinks. Yeah.
So I mean, where we agree with him, I think it's important. We can agree with him on the problem, but the difference is we think we have a sort of background worldview that justifies that critique.
That can support the critique in the first place. Yeah.
Where clearly he doesn't, right? So what is he going to say to the guy who says, Marcuse, I didn't sign up for your barn orgy, dude?
Yeah.
Why are you forcing this on me? He's not going to have the requisite worldview to support why anybody should want his barn orgy over, say, a traditional structure, or even just you know, or just living in the machine as it currently is, right? It's completely arbitrary.
If Woodstock's not your jam, you're out of luck here, and he has no reply to you but the exercise of power, right? And that's right. And that's where totalitarianism gets nasty, right? And okay, so like, what are the alternatives? So there's one, like, you know, we're going to take the machine, okay, but it would seem at least Marcuse has no grounds to justify taking the machine. You can appeal to, you know, attempt to recover something like the Greek view, okay. You can also say, hey, what we need to do is just find, you know, a space where we can wait for something else to show up for us that isn't the machine too, a kind of perpetual advent kind of attitude, right? Like the first I would identify with, you know, the appeal to classical philosophy. The latter I identify with something like Heidegger, right? But these are very distinct options from, you know, we're just gonna no, what we need is we need our own news network that we can like use to trick everybody now, right?
Yeah,
because that's what Marcuse has in mind, right? And I think either way, I would rather not participate in the domination, right? And so that's why I think for me the options are the recovery of the classical or perpetual advent, right?
Yes, yeah, I'm with you there, 100%. Wow, all right, really good stuff. Really great series. We thought this was going to be Marxism for the people for a minute there, but it's not. But it's not. The two non-Marxists will continue being non-Marxists and happily so. But there were many important and valuable insights that we got from this book. There's no doubt. I think we really did do our sort of scholarly duty of engaging with the text itself. Being able to say, this is important, right? Being able to say, I understand before we say, I agree or I disagree.
Right.
That's always the critical thing. And if nothing else, we wanted to give that example here for the gentle listeners, right?
And you know, his critical side still stands, I think, right? I mean, I think much of what he rejects, he's right to reject. But when it comes to his affirmations, that things get creepy. Right.
So what are some of the, I guess, practical contemporary takeaways for this book? When you let me ask you this: when you hand this book to one of your students, say, "Hey, you want to understand what's going on in contemporary society," what do you want the response to be after reading the book? Right? What are the you see what I'm asking?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Like, well, one, and actually, I think when I do teach the basics of the kind of neo-Heideggerian critique of technological rationality, I'm going to use that chapter from this book just because he brings a lot of strands together from different versions of that, and it's pretty accessible, right? Much more so than Heidegger's actual texts, right?
Yeah.
So I think I'm actually going to use that chapter in a class I teach regularly. Okay. And so one, what I want them to come away with is I want them to see before them how blinding our mediation of ourselves in the world through technology is. Like, let them see the possibility there's something really big that we might be missing about the world, in as much as we only allow our focus to be set by this machine that is like dictating what that focus should be to us, right? That's the number one thing I want them to come away with, right? And then secondly, because myself and most of my in-person students are not of a Marxist ilk at all, right? And I want them to understand, like, a lot of this wokeness stuff has its origins in Marcuse.
Yeah.
And I want them to see that there's something like very good common cause in much of that, but also to see like this latest moment here, right? But what these people have in mind is their own version of technological totalitarian domination. They just don't see it for themselves as that, right?
Right.
And that's
yes, I mean, again, mutual admiration, fawning society. But I mean, that's the mark of a good professor, right? You want your non-Marxist students to understand Marxism better than the average Antifa member, right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Right. Mm-hmm. And for me, it's not so much that I think they're going to go out and do apologetic battle with like Antifa people or something like that, right? They're going to like win the war of ideas. I don't even know what counts for that now, given our situation, but at least they'll understand what is trying to be done to them.
Right. If nothing else, it will make them resistant, right?
Yeah. And that's actually when you want to get into Heidegger's critique of technological rationality. For him, he thinks it's just by realizing that we're dominated by technology is a very important liberating step. In fact,
it is.
Yeah, because it's to realize, oh no, it turns out we don't run reality. It seems like technology is running it now, and which is a way of our stepping away from a need of control for things. Right?
It's a way of starting to get out of the cave, and we're all fans of that, right?
We're all fans of that, yeah. So that's usually what I want for my students. This, and really any book I teach my students. Yeah.
Does it help you get out of the cave, right? Yeah, excellent.
Yes, exactly.
So let me make a few announcements here.
Consciousness raising, as the Marxists would put it.
So my wonderful wife, Christine, has begun organizing the series on our Philosophy for the People channel. So you'll see there's just like nice little playlists now. We have the Plato one. This one will be finished after today. So we'll have the Marcuse one. We have the Leibniz one. And Jim, I believe we are heading to Aristotle next. Is that still the plan?
Yes.
So we're going to do ethics and politics. We're going big.
Mega series.
But it's necessary.
It's necessary. Yeah. I mean, so what better way to think of like what the ground we've covered in Marcuse?
Yeah.
Well, what better way to to read, to answer the Republic by reading Marcuse, right? That's really what happened there, right? And now what better way to answer Marcuse but to read Aristotle's Practical Philosophy?
Right? Oh, so good.
In the same, exactly. So I think it's a great, I think it'd be great if we find a way to recommend to the listeners to take these series in order. Go Republic, go One Dimensional Man, and then go Aristotle's Practical Writings.
Yeah, do a little Leibniz on the side. That was only a
three-parter. That's a three-parter.
Yeah, love me some Leibniz. All right, let's do a few other announcements before we go. First off, not entirely related, but it will be of interest to people here. I've got a new article published over at Catholic Answers, defending free will. So I think they did a nice job editing this. If you head over to Catholic Answers, you'll see my article called "There's More to Life Than Physics," and I take a pretty traditional perspective here, but I think there's some kind of cool new insights going on as well. I don't know if you read that yet, Jim, but
I just looked it over when you sent it to me, but it looks cool. It's going to be part of my afternoon agenda now.
Yeah, it's relatively short, but I think people will find that useful. I do my best to just really try and get the debate straight. I mean, so much of the debate between determinism and compatibilism of free will is just confused on very basic conceptual levels. So try to get it straight and offer both a defense and a proposal. So people might like that. It's a very Aristotelian proposal, which I think is cool. And we have new courses coming out. So
Of course.
I've got mine already over at philosophyforthepeople.com, Foundations of Reality, the first course that I have, and we're using cosmological reasoning to shine a light on the foundation of everything. So I'm taking both traditional insights and some contemporary developments. And to me, these types of arguments, contingency arguments, I really don't see them as a way to win apologetic battles. I really see them as tools, right?
Yeah.
Tools for investigation to help us with understanding. So that's there.
Yeah,
But
they're a pathway to enlightenment.
That's it.
I mean, I don't think we should be embarrassed about the spooky wooey part of what we're doing as philosophers. Right? You know what I mean? That's a pathway to. They are ways to enlightenment.
Right. And now you got one on darkness, don't you, Jim? Coming
Yes.
down the pipeline. Do tell.
I think tomorrow we'll be dropping How Not to Be a Nihilist, a constructive confrontation with Friedrich Nietzsche. It's a lecture course, fairly traditional lecture course, 5 lectures ranging from 30 to 60 minutes. They're going to include recommendations for artistic engagement with the material. So after each lecture, there's a recommendation for poetry, film, prose that you might read that would help you like see these ideas.
A painting?
A painting. There's some painings I'm recommending there.
I love that. Do you have like attire for what to wear when looking into painting? Maybe nothing, perhaps?
Yeah, yeah. A picnic, right? Yeah. And so so there's because this is how I teach mostly now
we're professionals, Jim. We can't speak like
professionals. We can't speak like that, right? I try to include aesthetic experience as much as possible.
That's cool. That's really cool.
Because I know most of the students that they're not going to go on and like be reading philosophy texts. They're mostly going to get this through their encounter with culture. So I include that. So that's part of it. So look for that to come. It's a pretty polished course.
Yeah, guys, let me just emphasize, right, how awesome that is. You know, Jim, obviously a serious scholar. He's teaching, courses that students pay a lot of money for.
Yeah.
So I hope you guys take advantage of this and support. I mean, forget about me, but support what good old Jim here is doing. And we're going to be mentioning that tomorrow on a special stream, because we're going to do 2 cool things tomorrow. We're going to do an unboxing. Word on Fire has sent me a little gift, and we're going to unbox it. And then we're going to do a confrontation with Nietzsche and scripture tomorrow, I believe. And that will tie in nicely to talking a little bit more about your course as well. So
yeah, it'd be cool.
So stay tuned for that, gentle listeners. Hope everybody here has enjoyed the Marcuse series. I certainly did. And do us a favor, guys. Comment after the stream, share with both of your friends if you don't mind, and leave a review and that stuff. It really makes a difference. So thank you all very much, and we'll catch you next time. Yeah.